It is another Sunday of pro baseball today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with Tom Vecchio as we get ready to close out the month of August. That's right, we're headed toward the pennant chases in September. Great to be with you once again and certainly previewing and discussing the upcoming week ahead. Tom, I hope you are well. Certainly we are headed toward, I think, a fantastic finish. It feels like one of these horse races, like the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness. I think like this is going to go right down to the wire everywhere. National League, American League. I mean, I don't know if it's good for the game at this point to have teams that are like sniffing 500 make the playoffs, but it's kind of where we're at based on what we've seen, especially this past week.
We are seeing absolute chaos across both the wildcard races, specifically in the AL. It seems that no team wants to win these. Everyone wants to lose all at the same time. They're all winning at the same time. There's no teams that are really taking a clear step forward in either of these races. We have multi-way ties happening. It is all coming down to the last 6 weeks of the season, which are not going to let up, thus far, compared to what we've seen.
Yeah, the American League in particular. Let's throw that up one more time. I mean, throw up is probably the word for it here. Honestly, the Toronto Blue Jays, who have had this just awful season, are like literally right in the mix. This is without Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is without basically anyone. They're in the mix for the wild card. I mean, it's safe to say that the Tampa Bay Rays and New York Yankees are really good teams, but this American League in particular, Tom, beyond that, I'm not even sure that I'm willing to say the Boston Red Sox are a lock for anything. I mean, they had that incredible run and they were great. And I think they probably will make the playoffs, but you look at that list and, I don't think Seattle's good at all and kind of an unmitigated disaster, to be honest with you. But like even they, if you think about it, are 1 5-game winning streak from being right back in this thing.
Right, and we saw the Sox earlier in the week. They ended a 5-game losing streak on the back of Peyton Tolley having a great performance at Toronto. And all it takes is another 4-game losing streak by one team and a 4-game winning streak by another team. All of a sudden, you get vaulted up into the standings. All of a sudden, the Mariners could be in it. The Mariners could be in it while we've talked about them consistently underperforming throughout the year. We're talking about the Twins, a team that we were confused as why they were buying at the deadline, and they're just a game or half a game out at this point. The Tigers trade away Skubal, and we think, okay, that's just wrapping up their season, closing the chapter, turning the page. They're 1 or a half a game out of the wild card. They're 3.5 games out of the AL Central. They can still win the AL Central despite trading away their best player. All they have to do is go on a 3 or 4 game winning streak and see the White Sox go on a 3-game losing streak, and they could win the division still.
Absolutely the case. Well, over in the National League, things are a little more succinct, as they say. And one of the teams that's still hanging around in the wild card chase are the St. Louis Cardinals. In fact, they're a few games out of that final wild card. And, certainly they don't have the highest percentage to make the playoffs like some of those teams in the American League do. But maybe they just got the biggest boost of any team in baseball in the month of August. Joshua Baez, who had such a great minor league season, gets called up to the big leagues. And Matthew Boyd is not going to sleep well for a long time, Tom, because he saw Baez 3 times, gave up 3 home runs. It's never happened in the history of baseball that a player would hit 3 home runs in his major league debut, let alone hit 2. So, sort of incredible here. I was watching the last time he came up, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way they're going to let this guy do this again. They actually pitched to him. And, he kind of missed the pitch there. I thought there was a chance that he was going to hit a 4th. Now, it didn't go anywhere. It just basically went to the outfield. But, I guess this is one of those stories to monitor, Tom, because I would say this. Like, Baez is not Albert Pujols, I don't think. But sometimes guys do come up and propel a team. And I wonder, and, look, I don't know what he's going to do. But I'll certainly have a close eye on this because this is like basically making a trade for a player if this kid Baez is that good. I don't know that he is, though. What do you think?
Could he be good over the course of a season, over the course of a career? Those are yet to be seen. Could he be good for 6 weeks? Yeah. We see it all the time where a player comes up or just a player goes on some unbelievable hot stretch where they just can't miss, essentially. Where they're going to be batting 350 or 400. They're going to be getting on base. They're going to be knocking guys in. They're always going to be productive at the plate. Could he do that for 6 weeks? Yeah, he could. Could he do that for an entire season? No, or we'd be talking about a generational player that's going to be, Hall of Fame bound as soon as, he hangs up his cleats, which I don't think is going to be the case with him. But the boost that the Cardinals get from him, maybe it's just like a rising tide lifts all ships because, they have some talent with young talent with Weatherholt and Jordan Walker finally put together a full season. Maybe this is just a missing piece to finally put them over the edge because they've been middling for a while. So a hot 6-week stretch from them could push them into a wild card spot. Do they do anything beyond that? Probably not. But it's at least exciting for the Cardinals to end the season on a high note going into spring training, knowing they got some pieces that they can really build around.
Shohei Ohtani earlier this week said regardless if the Dodgers are sold, which would include, of course, Mark Walter, who has basically poured a lot of his own money into the Los Angeles Dodgers. Apparently, according to The Athletic, Ohtani will stay with LA regardless of which. Now, we did understand that he's got a clause in his contract that's called a key man clause. He can exercise that if the team is sold, he can bail. But for this to come out tells me that it's legit. Like, I don't know why it would unless it would be legitimate. I don't think you'd see a reverse course in something like this. So certainly really good news for the Dodgers, and Ohtani has what we would call like the lifetime contract with all that deferred money. If he chooses to stay, and why wouldn't he? I mean, Ohtani probably looks at it too. I'm like one injury away from not playing. Like everybody else, keep the money, stick with it, take that deferred money for the rest of your life. Makes sense to me.
It does. It's interesting to see that this is in his contract to begin with, and we didn't know about this prior. I think I've always wanted players to have the most control that they possibly can have. So to see teams give these types of unique clauses to players, I think is always good for the player. Like, listen, I signed on for this team, this ownership, this front office, and if you just sell the team and they change directions completely, that's not what I agreed to. You agreed to me that I would be here long term, you would be here long term. Like, the verbiage at the use, we're going to build this together. And if one of them bails, well, then the player should be able to leave. We see this in college where a player commits to somewhere and then the coach leaves. No, he's committing to that coach. He wants to be there for that, institution, for that coach. I think it should be somewhat popular or commonplace among player contracts to say, I'm here for this owner and this GM, and if that changes, I have the right to leave as well.
And Walter under investigation right now, and also sold the Los Angeles Lakers. So if he ends up having to sell the Dodgers too, then this would sort of be the big story there. All right, so the days are all mixed up for me because between the Marlins and SportsGrid, I don't know what day it is. But I do know I saw Paul Skeens pitch on Tuesday in Miami, and he got beat up quite a bit. He threw about 65 pitches through 5 innings. He came out of the game. He never hit 97 miles an hour. There's just so much discussion as to why his velocity has dropped and why he's just not as effective, Tom. And there's just like so many different reasons. I'm not going to pretend. Look, the Pirates have major league pitching coaches and analytics groups, Tom. If they can't figure it out, then we probably shouldn't try to. But my thing is this. I have a feeling whatever it is just can't be fixed right now, Tom. I think he gets into the offseason. Whatever the issue is weight, mechanics. He fixes it, and he becomes awesome Paul Skeens again. I'm not worried, but what I would say to people who were betting on Paul Skeens for the next couple of months, you're taking a pretty big risk because I don't think this is something you can fix in August.
I would agree. There's a lot of different reports out there. Half of them are probably not true. More than half of them are probably not true. There's probably pieces of bits that are true, saying, that the Pirates are doing this intentionally to scale back on him to preserve his arm, just to decrease the workload so he doesn't have to be pitching that hard and that much. There's all these sorts of things. I agree with you. To your point, this is not something that's going to happen mid-season. That's going to be rectified. This is going to be a complete change of course and a new fundamental training regimen in the offseason. It's not going to happen mid-season when, frankly, the Pirates are out of it.
No. Yeah, and also Skeens said that he would have taken himself out of the game. And actually, those pictures on Miami Beach posted of him looking a little bit on the heavier side. I mean, look, is it possible that has something to do with it? Sure. But, they'll get this figured out. Folks, it just can't happen now. I agree with Tom. When the season's over for Pittsburgh, they'll shut him down. We'll be right back. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. the guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the conference. It's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey, absolutely.
It's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is. It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today. As we enter another week of baseball, is it possible that the Baltimore Orioles will continue to use Pete Alonso in the leadoff spot? Seems like they are experimenting with this, Tom. Alonso, certainly has always been a 3-hole guy, a 4-hole guy, sometimes a 2-hole guy also. But on Friday, he said that he will embrace it and said, hey, look, maybe I can be a little bit like Kyle Schwarber, who leads off, bats lefty. Sort of makes some sense here. Unfortunately for the Orioles, it has been a down season for them, probably more on the pitching side, honestly, than it has been on the hitting side. But Pete Alonso is always seemingly willing to do whatever it takes to win. I got to tell you, I look back on this now, I wonder if the Mets, if they could do this all over again, would have just paid Pete Alonso. It just still feels weird to see him in an Orioles jersey. And quite frankly, I wonder if, call me crazy, I wonder if the Mets talk to the Orioles. They're just like, look, give us this contract. We'll take it back. We'll put him at first base every day and get it figured out.
Yeah, I would say a lot of things about Pete Alonso. I'm always of the belief that you should be getting your best hitters as many plate appearances as possible. That's we've seen it over the past few years where the best hitters on teams went from hitting 3 or 4 to start hitting 2. And if this does any... the Orioles, there's no reason for them not to try. You need at least a little bit of spark. And if it's going to be Pete Alonso hitting leadoff and Gunnar Henderson hitting 2, I think that's fine. You want to mix and match those guys and continue to experiment to find what works for your team. You should be doing that. That's not the only problem that the Orioles have when it comes to lineup construction and lineup order. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. But I think experimenting that is good. Getting a power hitter in there at 1, as we've seen what the Phillies do with Schwarber over the years, I think is a totally viable outcome or viable thing to try. Because why not at a certain point? Get Henderson behind him, get him with runners on base, because it's not as if Gunnar Henderson's had put together a perfect season. He's had plenty of struggles this year and last. Get him in a new spot, make pitchers forced to pitch to him, and that means we're going to be getting more production in some capacity from the Orioles.
Before you know it, a month from now, a little bit more, we'll be talking about Major League Baseball free agency. I certainly think there's a chance that some of this happens in November this year, given everything that's going on with the lockout or a potential lockout and such. I really don't know the answer to that, but maybe it's a possibility. Jazz Chisholm may have to make a pretty big decision on his future, because it seems to me that he's going to enter free agency with, what'd you say, Tom, getting at most like a 2-year deal for some team. He's going through a horrific season right now and can't hit left-handed pitching at all, like zero. His career with New York has actually been okay. I mean, if you look at his stats overall, but entering free agency, and I don't know. I kind of feel like, there's some people that I talk to that say, oh, he'll have to settle for a 1-year pillow deal and then go back out to free agency. I think Jazz is going to want to cash in as much as he can. So, call me crazy Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Angels. I don't know. I think he's going to take the money somewhere as much as he can and just go for a multi-year deal. I don't think it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, No, I would say this is a spot that a lot of players are going to be in. They're coming off a down year, and we're going into an offseason that is highly uncertain given the CBA and the structure of it, what's going to look like, what teams are going to be willing to spend. We just don't know. So to see players have to take shorter, lower money deals would not surprise me. You take a 2-year deal, you play it out. Maybe you trade it at next year's deadline with 1 year, or you have signed a 1-year deal and you can go into the offseason knowing what the new CBA looks like, knowing what teams are able to spend, and then you try to put together a good season to get another long-term deal. That's why I think a lot of players are going to be in. Jazz is coming off a bad year. To your point with the Yankees overall, it looks fine, but optically right now, no team's going to look back and say, he was terrible, and we're coming up to free agency uncertainty given the new CBA. Let's sign him to a long-term deal. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Could be another player coming in from overseas. We will see. Sato is his name. 317, 404 OPS, 205 WRC plus. The usual names: Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies, etc. Although I wouldn't rule anything out, Tom. I mean, and Murakami did end up with the White Sox. Let's call it what it was. Maybe the best signing of anybody this offseason. The question will be again: is this? Why would any player with the uncertainty of the CBA sign with a baseball team until it's all said and done? So I think we revisit this story next March. That's kind of my opinion on this one.
I was about to say, this is not something that we're going to see some sprint to sign him come December, come the winter meetings. I don't think any player that's being posted would sign or should sign until after the CBA is officially signed and we have like ink to paper, because there's no reason for him to sign knowing that there's uncertainty, and you don't want the contract to start. Oh, is he going to come over here? He's not going to come over when spring training going to start. He has to get acclimated, all these sorts of things. So it's interesting to see a high level player being posted and then to see, the teams that are after him. But this is not going to be a quick turnaround. We're going to be talking about this theoretically for months.
The Washington Nationals are kind of hanging around a little bit. I thought it was over once they got swept 4 games in a row and then lost 7. They made an interesting announcement, I thought, earlier this week, Tom. They decided that C.J. Abrams is going to move from shortstop to second base. And Abrams is, arguably the best offensive shortstop in baseball. I don't even think that there's a lot of debate on that, honestly. So now he'll be the best second baseman offensively in baseball. He was not a great shortstop. The other thing is Washington, if I'm not mistaken, has a phenomenal prospect getting ready to come up to the big leagues as well at shortstop who they want to play. They're saying it's for Nasim Nunez. I'm not really buying that. But, look, Abrams has very little leg to stand on at this point. I know he's a great offensive player. But until you become a free agent, you got to just do what the team wants you to do. He really hasn't. I haven't heard him say that he doesn't want to do this. So I assume it's happiness and rainbows for the time being there.
First and foremost, I would say credit to C.J. Abrams to being open to the move. And if this is him having a mature moment saying the Nats have some prospect that they want to call up, I know I'm good here, I can hit, am I going to do what's best for the team to move to second base? If he's saying that to himself and he wants to do that and move to second base, all credit to him. He's doing what he can to help the team. There were trade rumors surrounding him where the Nats can move him. The Nats overperformed and they kind of fell off. There's a lot going on with the team, but if he's willing to take a step to the side almost and go to a different position that was not his in order to do what's best for the team, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, through salary arbitration, certainly he would stand to make more playing shortstop than second base, but that's just sort of where things are. Finally, Hunter Green going to miss another season, at least, unfortunately for him. A second Tommy John surgery here, Tom. It's sad to say, career in doubt, of course, when you have this sort of thing happen.
Huge impact to him and really the future of the Reds. It should have been a 1-2 combo of him and Chase Burns for years to come. Yet to be seen of how it actually impacts them.
And Burns has been the ace of that staff, without a doubt. We'll be back with more Pro Baseball Today next. Who's hot in Major League Baseball? As we wrap up the week and head toward next week, let's take a look. Couple of hitters and then some pitchers as well. Boy, the bust-out season for Jack Caglione. It took a while, Tom, like a real long time. You know, everyone wanted him to come up last year and just scorch. It didn't happen. Didn't happen at the beginning of the season, but you could say from about May on, Caglione has delivered what we thought he would when he got drafted. And unfortunately, his buddy Vinny P did not have the same season that they thought he would, and so that's part of it. Witt's injuries, part of it. The Royals' disastrous bullpen has been part of it, but a shining light for Jack Caglione. I'm going to guess going into next season, I think Jack Caglione is going to be a very interesting player to watch in terms of his home run totals, his average totals. Sometimes it just takes a while. Young player finally clicking.
Yeah, and that's all it is. It's not going to happen over 50 plate appearances or 100 plate appearances. It's going to take a couple hundred plate appearances for him to finally get settled, finally get acclimated at the MLB level. I wanted to believe in the Royals this year. I really did, with Michael Garcia and Bobby Witt and Caglione and Vinny P and Sal Perez. Like, I wanted to believe that their offense was going to be great, especially with them moving the fences in. I was like, okay, we're going to see some real run production out of the Royals. The pitching was always going to be an issue. I was like, okay, the Royals are going to be in a spot to truly compete for the wild card, given the dynamic of the AL Central and the other teams around them. And Caglione stepping up and leading the team was not something I expected, given the fact that they had a bunch of other injuries. But if they could be healthy, the Royals can be a super fun lineup next year. That's just what it comes down to. Stay healthy, and you got power, you got speed, you got average. They kind of check all the boxes that you want.
A lot of the Padres, including Jackson Merrill, seem to be having a much better second half than they did in the first half, and a lot of credit seems to be going to their hitting coach, Steven Souza Jr., who, of course, just a short time ago used to play in the big leagues, in fact, with the Diamondbacks not that long ago. But Merrill and Machado and Tatis and Sheets, and the Padres are playing much better now, Tom, in the second half than they did in the first half. For a while, they had the most home runs of any team in baseball out of the All-Star break, but Merrill... I don't know. Is he that Caglione type guy next year where we would put him in that same category? I think he's just overall a really solid player and having a nice season for the Padres. Look out for them here next couple of months. Right.
And this is just another example of it. Things don't happen overnight in baseball. Tatis went the first 400 some odd games, it seems like, without hitting a home run the past year, 400 plate appearances, whatever it was. It just takes some time to get rolling. And, Jackson Merrill is a player that I always wanted to believe in, especially when he got called up. He had to deal with the injury a couple years ago. But the Padres have the pieces to give teams trouble, especially when it comes to longer series. They have enough pitching. They have the great back end of the bullpen. To me, it's always about their hitters, because if their hitters go on a cold streak, it looks really bad. But when they have a hot streak, as they have been over the past few weeks, they look like one of the most dangerous teams in baseball, and no opposing pitching staff would possibly want to face them in a short series.
Meanwhile, let's go to a couple of pitchers here. The Red Sox have been carried by their pitchers and Willie Abreu over the last couple of months. One of them has been Peyton Tolley. 20 innings pitched, 1.35 earned run average, 25 strikeouts, and 4 walks. Red Sox now have a pretty strong rotation, 3 or 4 deep. I guess we just have to see if that hot run is sustainable, Tom, between now and the end of the season. It feels like since then, they're playing about 500 baseball. Fortunately, they're in the American League. If they play 500 and Tolley and some of the other pitchers and, Sonny Gray pitch well, they're going to make the playoffs. I'm still a little skeptical that what we saw was real.
Right. Peyton Tolley's been awesome. Shout out to him. He's helping carry one of my NFBC teams, which I really do appreciate at this point in the year. But he's been great. I think how good he is was part of the reason that the Red Sox did trade Connolly early, and they were willing to move on from him just because they know, okay, they have Sonny Gray, they have Ranger Suarez, they can now have this emerging ace with Peyton Tolley. He's been great, and frankly, depending on how the schedule falls, he's a game one starter for them in the playoffs. It's either him or Gray, I think, depending on how the end of the season shakes out of who is pitching when, but he is shaping up to be a true number one ace for a team.
Yeah, definitely so. It's amazing to see. Also, this is the longest streak in baseball. Brandon Pfaadt, 25 consecutive scoreless innings. You see 20 in his last 3 starts. What a heater this guy is on. And no surprise here, Tom. Arizona, like San Diego, getting the soft part of their schedule and, certainly making the most of it. Those two teams were under 500, Tom, and look at their record now. They're 6-7 games over.
Yeah, Fott has been unbelievable, and the pitching staff for the Diamondbacks has been all over the place this season. The injuries, the inconsistency, players being called up after being sent down, you name it. They have dealt with it all between Gallen, between Merrill Kelly, between Ryan Nelson, and now Fott. He is also shaping up to be a true ace, and they need him to be that because the pitching staff has been one of their big inconsistencies throughout the year. They need him to be strong to close out the last 6 weeks.
Coming up next, we will talk about who's hot and who's not, team-wise in Major League Baseball. You're watching Pro Baseball Today on SportsGrid. We'll be right back. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. The guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey, absolutely.
It's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is. It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back to Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. Let's go through who's hot and who's not in Major League Baseball. We'll start off with the Tampa Bay Rays. Although they haven't looked good against Baltimore this weekend, it seems like they've just been hot all season. Although, Tom, I don't know that those games earlier in the week against Sacramento even count at this point. I'm watching the A's, and I'm thinking that this is like approaching Colorado-esque levels, like White Sox of a couple of years ago-esque levels. The A's, to me, may have the worst record in the last decade from May on. Like, it is stunning to see how bad they are, and everybody's getting fired. Their GM, their pitching coach, my buddy Marcotte, former Marlin. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think he's going to make it through this carnage here. But we'll get to the A's here in a minute. Tampa Bay, they now winning road games. I mean, look, Tom, I can make a case Judge comes back, Stanton comes back, maybe end of the season, Yankees get hot and catch him. I can. And by the way, I can make a case that the Yankees may beat the Rays in a playoff series too, or maybe Boston as well. I think the Rays are making the playoffs. I think they're winning the division. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but they seem good enough to me to get this done.
Right. Great West Coast road trip for them when they went 9-0 on the road trip. It's good to see them win games when we talked about them so long. They were a machine at home, just constantly winning games. At one point, they were 41-18 at home, just absolutely unbelievable. They struggled a little bit on the road. Yeah, you go on the road and you play a little bit lesser competition, but it is still good to pick up those wins. They come home, they lose a couple to division rival after a long road trip. A hungry Orioles team that's fighting and scrapping for every win they can get. I don't think this is an indictment on the Rays. I still think they're very good overall, but again, I think the Rays are in a tier of their own, at least when it comes to the AL. I think they're in, the top tier. And then we could put the Yankees and the Red Sox, kind of like a tier 2, like a 2A, 2B type of scenario. But I really do think the Rays are the class. I don't know if they're good enough to beat the Dodgers or the Braves, but they are the best in the AL as of now.
They do look like it. Don't look now. The Padres are coming on strong here. They beat Milwaukee 3 games in a row. It's incredible to see the Padres not only hanging around, but now have themselves a playoff position if they can hang on in the National League. They're playing Cleveland this weekend. They came back to beat Milwaukee in extra innings on Wednesday. And as you can see right now, they and the Arizona Diamondbacks and Philadelphia Phillies entering Sunday's play have the same exact record. And only 2 of those 3 teams are going to get in, and barring, and the team we'll talk about in a minute, the Cubs collapsing, which is always in play based on the history of the Cubs. I don't know. I mean, those 3, let's throw that up there again, Sam. Those 3 teams, and listen, I got to throw my Marlins in there too. Let me add them to as the 4th. But of the teams that are left, Tom, if you had to reset and say, here's who I think gets in, who's it going to be? Final 2 wild cards.
At this point, it might be the Diamondbacks and the Padres. The Phillies, they have not looked good. And when you're going to, what we saw from the Phillies last week, when you're going to St. Louis and you have your top starters of Chris Sanchez and Zach Wheeler, and you are losing those games on the road against the most middling team we could possibly find with the Cardinals, when you're losing those games, that's an indictment on the Phillies offense. The pitching is great, but just the momentum that the Diamondbacks and the Padres have right now, it is going to be tough to overcome both of them if the Phillies can't get their offense going.
To try to figure this one out, the Toronto Blue Jays have had an awful season. Like when I say awful, nothing has gone their way. And yet they are just a game out in the wild card. They took care of business this weekend and won the series against Boston. They took care of the earlier series this week against the Red Sox. And don't look now, but here they come. And again, Tom, to me, the American League wild card, here's what it is. A March Madness final weekend, whoever gets hot is getting in. That's it. There is nothing else for me. It's not. By the way, it is not that Texas is better than Toronto or Detroit is better than Minnesota or Cleveland is better than Texas. It's just whoever wins in the final week is going to make the playoffs to me. I don't see it any other way.
I would say the exact same thing. And the thing that I keep thinking about is what we talked about in the beginning of July, leading up to the trade deadline. It's like, well, this team could trade, this team could sell, they could buy. We just don't know because, and then he said the same thing next week. He's like, what we're saying now is not going to be dramatically different than we say next week or a month from now, just because whoever is hot in the final week of the season and whoever can string together 2 or 3 wins, they will make it and the other team won't. And whether it's the Blue Jays or the Orioles or the Tigers or the Guardians, all of it's going to change from now until a month from now, and whoever wins will make it. It's that simple, as you said.
Yeah, they're 500 teams, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. Now, look, some team could go on a run like Cleveland did last year. They won 10 in a row in September. That got them in. If that happens, that could change things. Seems like the Cubs have a secure wild card spot, but it is the Cubs. We saw that 2 years ago, and the Cubs completely fell out of it. Don't forget that. They were in the number 1. They fell out to number 4. This week, they had a nice week against Washington, and we'll see what happens on Sunday with them against the St. Louis Cardinals. But I guess the difference between this Cubs team and some of the others, and they'll get some pitchers back. I know Edward Cabrera is coming back too. But it seems like the difference is they have either the MVP winner or the runner-up, and Pete Crow Armstrong. Like that's a big difference for them. And people are making that case to say, hey, look, it's a different kind of Cubs team because of that guy. It's kind of fair to say, I think, a little bit. He's just such an impactful player right now.
He is, and I would also say that at least the Cubs went out and tried to address the issues that they had with the starting pitching. Like they went out and they went moves to get starting pitchers because that's where they were extremely deficient. And it wasn't, necessarily a fault of their own. They were dealing with so many injuries and starting off the season not even being fully healthy, knowing that Justin Steele wasn't there. And then you lose pitchers throughout the season, and Jameson Tyone wasn't good, and they DFA'd him. At least they went out to make the trades to remedy that. So I would have hope in the Cubs actually sustaining this. And frankly, I think that the Cubs are still live to win the division. I know we'll get there and it's still 6 weeks to go, but the Brewers have kind of faltered as of late, and they still have, 6 games against each other left. That 6 games in, a 4-game lead at this point in the NL Central, that's not locked up yet.
Brewers are great at home, best team in baseball, but on the road don't seem like that same team. It'll be important for them in the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Mets somehow had a winning week. Can you believe this? They beat Atlanta 1 out of 3 and then took care of Washington Friday and Saturday. Robert Stock, my guy, back pitching in the big leagues again, got blown up last week, pitched well on Saturday. I don't know. Do we need to spend more than 15 seconds on the Mets here, Tom? You tell me. Just a lucky week for me.
Yeah. 11 games back. They won some games. It looks nice. They're great after the deadline, which they would have loved before, but that's it.
St. Louis Cardinals got Joshua Baez, called them up. They beat the Cubs on Saturday 8-4. They are back hanging around in the wild card spot. They fell a few games below Miami. Now they are tied with Miami. The Cardinals will have to beat out Miami and beat out Philadelphia and beat out either San Diego or Arizona to get in. I think, Tom, we would agree. Neither of us see that happening. On FanGraphs, their odds are less than 10%. But let's use that little, glimmer of hope here with a guy like Baez. I mean, Tom, we have seen this before. And by the way, Baez may not even have a great career, but I wouldn't put it past this kid to maybe this is an epic run for a player in the big leagues that carries a player for a while. Maybe that happens now with the St. Louis Cardinals. I know, the excitement level for when a player like this makes his debut and does what he does, that can carry over some momentum for a while.
It certainly can. The way I would put it or phrase it is, I don't think the Cardinals are going to make it. I don't think they're as good as the Diamondbacks, the Padres, or the Phillies, but they're going to be the team that causes a lot of issues for those teams. And based on the fact that the Cardinals can play some games against the Reds and the Pirates to close things out, and the Padres and the Diamondbacks are going to have to play each other and play the Dodgers to close out the season, that's going to be an issue because I just don't know if the Cardinals can do enough to overcome. They're fun. The Baez story is fun. I think they can propel themselves to an extra couple wins, but I just don't think they're well-rounded enough to take a wild card away from those other teams.
And they're going to play the Reds, who are not playing so well, next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So a chance for them to continue to hang around in the wild card chase. All right, coming up next, we go through some of the teams that have had rough weeks, but certainly can turn things around next week. One of those teams that was thought to maybe be one of the favorites to win the American League West finally won a game on Saturday, but it has been a brutal stretch for the Texas Rangers. We'll talk about them and also the New York Yankees when we return on the Sunday edition of Pro Baseball Today right here on SportsGrid. So stay with us. We'll be back after these messages. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. The guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan has to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey,
It's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
The American League West has been one of those upside-down divisions all season long. It looked like the Houston Astros were out of it in May or June with a negative run differential of like 30 or 40. Brutal season for them. All of a sudden, they turn it around, and the Texas Rangers go from a team that was supposed to win the division that, I mean, may not even make the playoffs this season, and they're going to look back to this past week, Tom, as maybe the reason why. You cannot do this against the Los Angeles Angels. And I understand the Angels are headed in the right direction. I actually really like a lot of the things that they're doing, and I saw them here in Miami last weekend. But, Tom, they are playing guys, with all due respect, I have never heard of at the end of their rotation, in their lineup, like out of the bullpen. I saw major league debuts going on in August, Tom, because they're cutting guys and trading guys. You cannot get swept by the Angels. The Rangers did, and to make matters worse, they lost to the worst team in baseball in the A's on Friday night. Now, Saturday, they probably took Skip Schumacher probably took a deep breath and said, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness we finally won a game here." But again, what can you say, Tom? Texas, Seattle, one of those teams wins 5 in a row. All of a sudden, they win the division. That could potentially happen this year.
They could be right back in it. And, also to make matters worse is they lost DeGrom in one of those starts. Now, they didn't say what it officially was. They said he came out due to tricep soreness or tricep fatigue, whatever it was. But you're dropping not just 1 or 2. You're losing the entire series versus the Angels, who are vying for the worst record in the league overall. You're going to lose potentially multiple games at the Athletics. It's just unacceptable when the division's up for grabs. It's not like they're holding on to a wild card spot and say, oh, they only have one path to make the postseason. They could win the division after how bad the division has been overall. Just an unacceptable week for the Rangers when they didn't do much at the deadline.
Things started off well for the Tigers after that incredible run that they've had this month, and then they fell flat this weekend. And, I think maybe that little hope, was kind of fleeting as the White Sox took care of them on Friday and Saturday and pushed them back in terms of the division. And it does seem like the White Sox are really the clear favorites at this point to win that division. They're not just hanging around. They pushed around the Tigers this weekend. And, certainly I think you could understand that the Tigers wouldn't make it. I mean, after all, Tom, they're playing right now without Skubal, who was traded, and without Riley Green, arguably their best hitter. They're fortunate Torkelson and some of the other bats got hot at the right time. But I would expect Detroit to fall back at some point, right?
I would, but I also have to buy into other teams being good around them, which I really can't do. So I don't think Detroit is well-rounded enough and has the pieces to put together a good postseason push. But I also can't buy into the Twins. I can't buy into the Blue Jays. I can't buy into these teams around them. So as long as they just play 500 baseball, the Tigers this is, they could have a shot in the final 10 days of the season to cement themselves in the postseason. That's what it comes down to.
The Yankees have lost 3 games in a row entering Sunday's play. No surprise here that they scored 2 runs in 3 days, because this is who the Yankees are. And then naturally, again, everyone wants to fire the manager. I mean, not understanding that you don't have Judge, you don't have Stanton. Stanton, by the way, I think could come back sooner than Judge. It feels like he's a couple of weeks away. But it's the same reality for the Yankees every year, Tom. They had that one season, I think it was 2 years ago, where they got hot, the bats got hot at the right time, and they went all the way to the World Series and then lost to the Dodgers. This feels more or less like all the Yankees teams we've seen recently. They win 90-something games, they make the playoffs, they win the first round, and then they run into a team that hits more than them, and then we reset and repeat until they change the roster construction and get more guys that can get on base. And look, Ben Rice did a nice job for them this year. I get it. But they simply have a lot of the same guys. Nothing ever changed. And their pitching, by the way, is really good too. But I just don't think they have enough slug, even with Judge and Stanton, to get to the World Series this year. I don't see it. But I do see them making it and winning a round and everyone screaming after they get knocked out again. Same thing.
Right. And it just comes down to the timeline. If they're able to get that in order for October 1st, the order that I've seen is Stanton, Bellinger, Judge in that order is what they will be returning. Can they get them all back in the lineup? Can they all be healthy enough? They're all going to be getting, firing on all cylinders at the same time, because just because they're back in the lineup doesn't mean they're actually in a groove. Are they going to go on rehab assignments? How long is this process going to take? So yeah, as everyone says, they'll make the playoffs, but how they are peaking at October 1st will determine what kind of form they're in and will determine how far they go.
Pretty much. Check back next month is fair to say. All right, so the Cleveland Guardians have been a disappointment, but they were a disappointment last year at this time and then went on that great run. I don't know if they have it in them this time. They are getting some really nice performances offensively for Stephen Kwan. They got Jose Ramirez back a couple of weeks ago, but it still seems like this offense is having a hard time scoring runs. It feels like most of the week they're hoping for 3 runs and they're starting pitching to get it done, which isn't really sustainable over the long haul.
It's never been sustainable. This has always been the Guardians' issue. For so many years, they had, and they still continue to have great pitching. Whatever they do in the entire structure of the organization, from top to bottom in the minor leagues, in developing pitchers, they're great at it. They have been when Kluber was there, when Bieber was there. They've always had great pitching. Not having good hitting and not having consistent offense has always been the Guardians' issue. Wanting them to go out and make big splashes in free agency or at the deadline to add consistent hitters to lineups is the thing that I always wanted to see from them. They were always like the Mariners, like great pitching, not enough hitting. And they never did that. I don't think they're good enough to make the postseason. I think the other teams around them are just a bit better in both categories, pitching and hitting. They just don't have enough.
You play the Giants and Rockies this week, so for Cleveland, this is the week to get right and jump back into this thing. If it doesn't happen, this is the softest part of their schedule remaining. They got to win these games. I'm out on Seattle completely. And Tom, they honored their the best players in the history of their franchise last week. They brought back Griffey and they brought back Randy Johnson and all the great Seattle Mariners, and then they lost 3 games in a row. All those games at home they lost, and then they lost Monday or Tuesday and Wednesday to the Yankees. And I know that they played well on Saturday against the Astros, but even the pitching now is going south a little bit for them. I have a feeling that this is one of those teams in the offseason that's going to have to do some roster reconstruction and not just dial it back and roll it back every year. It feels like we're going through this every year with Seattle. They're picked to win the division. They either win it and get knocked out or don't win it at all. Their pitching is good enough for them to roll off and win the division. I'm not going to rule anyone out, but I personally am out on Seattle. I was out on Houston. I got to pull them back in now. I still think Texas at some point gets hot, but how can the Mariners last weekend honor the greatest players in the history of their franchise in front of their fans, 3 sold-out games, and lose all 3? Ugly.
Very ugly. We're looking at a manager change in the offseason. We're looking at complete roster overhaul. You need the big players to step up. You need the young players that you signed to big contracts to be those stars. They need a lot to go right. But frankly, it's a very winnable division.
And remember, they hired Dan Wilson, and he did a good job, I thought, for them last year. But yeah, Tom's probably right. Could be another change coming. We'll wrap up this first hour next. Welcome back to Pro Baseball. Today, the Los Angeles Dodgers certainly are still favored to win the World Series, but the month of August has not been kind to them. Long losing streak, struggling in the ninth inning, and speaking of struggling, Kyle Tucker has had a really nice season in his first year for the Dodgers when he's not playing in Los Angeles. But when he is playing in Los Angeles, the numbers are ugly, and Dave Roberts, the skipper of the Dodgers yesterday, said that he's starting to see the frustration when he plays at home. So they didn't play him for a day. Now, the good news is that this is not Philadelphia or New York, and LA fans are technically and typically very forgiving when it comes to their players. But I was sort of surprised that the skipper let this one out here, Tom. I didn't see this coming. This is not something that always comes to light a little bit. He could have just said, given a day off. But yeah, I guess this is what's going on with KT.
Yeah, I approach this from two different angles. Are we looking at it from the manager-team dynamic of Dave Roberts is actually saying this, verbatim? He actually is, pointing to something directly, or am I taking the approach of what am I going to be looking at in Kyle Tucker's home road splits? That is there a reason for that? The thing I want to say is maybe just taking him time getting adjusted to the sight lines in LA, like the hitter's eye in the back. Is there actually some fundamental mechanical reason that Kyle Tucker is struggling when in reality he's an awesome hitter? He did it when he was with the Astros for so many years. He was good when he was on the Cubs last year. Is there something in LA's park that is making him struggle? Because he's very good on the road. There's a very stark difference. So I want to know if there's actually something different approach from that angle, or is it the team dynamic of Dave Roberts actually saying this is actually something pretty unique, and do we need to be looking at that, or do they just need to change a spot in the roster and be that simple as a fix?
Couple of trades at the deadline have not gone well. One of them was the New York Yankees trying to bolster their offense a little bit by getting Elio Ramos from the Giants. He's played 10 games. He's 2 for 32. And apparently that's the lowest batting average by a position player in his first 10 games with the Yankees since Skeeter Shelton in 1915. We usually see the opposite of this, Tom. Usually when those guys put on the pinstripes, for example, I remember Luke Voigt a few years ago, who was just a middling player. Boom, he gets really hot. Kevin Moss in his debut also in 1990 looked really good too. But Helio Ramos, the thing is not a huge investment here, Tom. If the Yankees don't want to play this guy, they don't have to, right?
Right, and at a certain point, it just comes down to what's best for the lineup as they will be getting 3 outfielders back. So it's not as if we're dealing with a situation where the Yankees are saying they're going to be required to play him. They need to play him. This is a player that may not play at all in the postseason, and he may not even make postseason rosters just based on who they have now and who they should be getting back. Another 3 outfielders on this roster, I'm not sure if he even makes it. So, like you said, the investment wasn't high. He ends up not being good, so be it. This happens to teams all the time. You kind of just got to move on from it.
Did you watch the Field of Dreams game earlier this week on Netflix? Very entertaining pregame. Very entertaining first 5 minutes, and then it looked like the Phillies just were going to smash the Twins, and it kind of ended with Kyle Schwarber homered to open the game. I always think that this is really well done. And they're going back next year. I believe they already announced that it is Kansas City and Boston in 2027, if I'm not mistaken. Is it? Here's the question, Tom. I loved it again. I thought it was great, but is it now too gimmicky at this point? I hate to say it. That's the question being asked. Has the shine worn off this a little bit? I'll say this. I think they got one more in them. I think next year you roll it out again, and that's it. I think you do it one more time because it was good enough for me to push it one more time through. What do you think?
Yeah, I caught bits and pieces of it. Did not watch the full game. I'll say that honestly. I'm with you. I think it's fun. I think it's good. We can do it. It can't be an every year thing. And it can't be an every year thing when there's so much going on. They're going to have this special Little League game that they always have at Williamsport. Are we going to have an overseas game? Are we doing we got to have a set number of them, and maybe we rotate them, and maybe we take a year off and go from there. But it changing or doing it every year, I think is a bit much. It loses its luster after a certain point.
The All-Star Game will be in Chicago next year at Wrigley. That was announced about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. They just announced that San Francisco is going to host the 2028 game. So that's coming to San Francisco. That's my favorite park in baseball. Been there many times. Love that park. I believe USA Today reported they want to have it in Baltimore in 2029, and then Tom, naturally, the rumor is 2030 would be Las Vegas. That would be the next few. All really good destination spots. But for me, San Francisco is a great one. I'm never going to be able to go to the Cubs one next year. That's going to be too much money for me. So my son is like, "Will you take me to San Francisco?" I'm like, "Let me put that one down as a possibility."
Okay, and that's going to be fun. A lot of home runs in the home run derby hit into McCovey Cove, where I think it's going to be a fun landing spot.
We'll be back with hour 2 of Pro Baseball Today right after this. Taking a look at the week ahead, let's get this series, Tom, out of the way quick so we can get to some of the other series here as the A's will battle the Royals. And yeah, it's just been that kind of season for both teams. Kansas City out of it, the A's out of it. Here are some of these starting pitchers. The A's basically are just rolling out whatever they can to get through this season. They have seen at least a good start from Gage Jump, I noticed last week. I'm not paying a ton of attention to the A's. And for, of course, the Royals, they've reinstated Randy Dobnak into their rotation. Once upon a time, a Twins pitcher here. Just working out the stretch here. I would expect the Royals to win the series, but does it matter? Probably not.
A lot of runs from the back end of both bullpens because they're terrible. This really matters if you're paying attention to late season fantasy baseball. You got some guys going on both sides. That would be important. And or if you're looking to stash prospects for anyone that they're calling up. That's about my level of interest in that.
All right, so Cardinals, Reds, sort of hanging around in the wild card chase, but, really low percentages to get in on FanGraphs. The Cardinals had a nice little surge here, and they will throw the same starters, and lucky for them, they've been very healthy all season long. Palante, Leahy, Liberatore, and McGreevy, and have all been pretty good, Tom. They don't do anything special, but except for be healthy, and that's really good for them. As far as the Reds are concerned, their pitching has really gone south. Louder since April. He was so good in April and then hasn't been able to perform well since. Abbott, of course, Burns is a monster. You would expect him to win that game Wednesday. And then Brady Singer, who pitched on Saturday, has also not had a really good season. But again, there's no guarantee. I could see a split, by the way, in this series. And I could see the Reds even winning this series. But this is one the Cardinals probably have to win.
Yeah, this is a extremely middling series when we're talking about it. The Cards 3.5 out, the Reds 6 out. If the Cards want any chance, this is the series that they have to take at least 2. They can't be dropping multiple games or more than multiple games to a team that's objectively worse than them. So if the Cards want any chance of making the postseason, they got to take 3 out of this series because these are the easy games for them. Playing the Reds, playing the Pirates, these are the games that they have to be picking up wins against and looking to split series versus the Cubs or the Brewers.
So the Diamondbacks this week will have Brandon Pfaadt going on Wednesday, but they'll have to kind of squeak out a win somehow against Ranger Suarez and Peyton Tolley on Monday or Tuesday. This is a really good series coming up. Mitch Bratt is still in that rotation for Arizona while Gallen gets healthy. They really have no other options here. On paper, the Red Sox probably favored, I would say, in at least 2 of these 3 games. But Arizona's a good team, Tom. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Diamondbacks win 2 out of 3 here. I would doubt a sweep is coming for either team.
Right. The Diamondbacks just put together a good series against the Braves. They won a couple there. Based on where the Diamondbacks are and how they've been surging, I know the Red Sox have been super hot, but I think this is going to be a little bit closer to some closer money lines in this one, a little bit more even across the board. The Peyton Tolley one may not be just because he's been so good for them, but really fun series. Like, this is an actual 2 postseason team bound teams that really both need to win. It's going to be good.
White Sox and Cubs, of course, north side and south side battle, always fun here. Shota Imanaga goes Monday for the Cubs, Gossman Tuesday, and then, boy, Clay Holmes has looked good for the Cubs. He goes on Wednesday. But look, the White Sox are playing good baseball, so let's not put it past them. Now their rotation is taking some hits with Davis Martin and Burke. I mean, these guys have just not been as good as they were earlier in the season. And so they're kind of having to piece it together. I mean, you look at those 3 starters, Castillo, Fedde, or Kitty, you think at the beginning of the year, Tom, that's an 0-3, you would think, for the White Sox. But, man, they've played good baseball, and they're getting the most out of their pitching.
They are. The Cubs are hot right now. I think that's the thing that's going for them. Jose Urquidy being signed to a major league contract after he was in AAA. As you said, they're dealing with some injuries. The White Sox, that is, when it comes to their pitching staff. I expect the Cubs to be pretty heavy favorites in all of those games. And I want to know what the wins looking like in those games because we could be looking at a lot of runs if we get some favorable wins at Wrigley.
Tigers will take on the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are expected to get back O'Neal Cruz next week. So that'll be a big boost for them. But the question is, can they, win a couple of games against the Tigers with their offense, struggling for the most part? Monday, Framber Valdez against Carmen Mlodzinski, who has just had a brutal time as a starter. He wants to be a starter, as we know, Tom, but he's much better as a reliever. Boy, Braxton Ashcraft, what a start he had last time out. I think he had the best start of the season, if I'm not mistaken. 85 pitches in a complete game, so I would expect them to win Tuesday. And then Wednesday is hard-throwing Jackson Jobe against Bubba Chandler. Lots of low scoring, I would imagine. What do you think? 3-2, 4-3 type games in those next week?
Yeah, we're looking at the Tigers half a game out in the wild card. Like, this is the series they have to take 2 or 3. The Pirates are scuffling right now. There's no reason that if the Tigers, again, it's just a matter of getting hot. Getting hot and winning a couple games when you can win a couple games. That's what the Tigers need to do after dropping the series over the weekend. Carter Montero was really solid in his last start out last week when he went 6 scoreless. Valdez has been completely up and down the entirety of the season, but the Tigers take 2 out of 3, and we see other teams around them lose. The Tigers are going to be in a wild card spot before we know it.
Braves take on the Twins. The Braves are just, simply in a weird spot here. It looks like they have the division wrapped up and they're just jockeying for position in the postseason. And, they're just, they get hot. They play 500. Like, we're not even talking about them at all, Tom. And I think the reason why is that they've just built this epic lead in the East. But Martin Perez against Bailey Ober of the Twins. The Twins will throw out Ober, Matthews, and Taj Bradley. They got Byron Buxton back in this lineup, and naturally, Royce Lewis has been fantastic in August, so that has kind of propelled them back into this race. I really don't trust the Twins. I'm just waiting for them to just fall out of this thing, but they keep hanging around.
Yeah, the Braves, this is what I would say, is it seems like they're on cruise control. To your point, a 7.5 game lead in the NL East, which they basically had for the entire year. Losing a series versus the Diamondbacks this past weekend. I want to see the Braves kind of go, pedal to the metal. I want to see them kind of shift gears, get in a postseason mindset and really start to dominate teams. Being on cruise control and just winning series or just getting by, playing a little bit of 500 because they can kind of afford to do so. The 7.5 game lead doesn't inspire me. I want to believe that the Braves are the second best team in the NL overall behind the Dodgers. I need to show it. I need to see them absolutely destroy the Twins, post 7, 8, 9 runs per game against this horrible pitching staff, and flex the offense.
You would think so, but it just Braves are just unpredictable right now. April, May, June, and even in July, you could make a case one of the best two teams in baseball, and now just kind of waiting till the end. All right, so my Marlins are on the road right now in Cincinnati, and then we'll finish off in Philadelphia. And unfortunately for the Marlins, they got a tough road here on Monday and Tuesday. Jansen, Junk, and Tyler Phillips, they're basically 4 and 5 starter or 3 and 4 starter, are going to face off with Sanchez and Wheeler. Wow, on Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to hope for the best there, and then hope that they could get a win Wednesday with Sandy on the mound. But Aaron Nola's been pitching fantastic too. Marlins didn't score a run for Sandy in his last start. If the Marlins are going to catch the Phillies in the standings and pass them up, they got to avoid a sweep here. They got to at least win one game in the series.
The thing I would say is that the Phillies haven't been winning when Chris Sanchez and Zach Wheeler have been starting. So, viewing this from two angles is, the Marlins, if there's any chance from this, is time to jump because the Phillies have not looked good. You're losing the series to the Cardinals this past week. Sanchez and Wheeler, I don't want to say that the attrition of the season is getting to them, but they just don't look to be at the same level that they were earlier in the year. So this would be the Marlins, chance to jump on them, or this is the Phillies have to say, hey, we got to kind of buckle down and right the ship. We're back at home. We can't be losing starts when Chris Sanchez and Zach Wheeler are starting. So yes, the Marlins do need to get at least one, but I think it's going to be a closer series than people realize.
I hope so. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Padres and Mets. Let's close out here. Walker Buehler against Nolan McLean. To me, McLean is, so far and away the Mets' best pitcher. He's been fantastic all season. Robbie Ray Tuesday against Thornton. King against Robert Stock. Boy, advantage Padres, I think, heavy in the series, but not Monday. I think McLean wins.
This is a proving point for the Mets. Are they actually going to cause some teams trouble after being pretty good after the deadline? And the Padres, for real, can they go out and win 2 of 3 or 3 of 3 in this series and kind of cement themselves in the postseason race?
The biggest road favorite in baseball this season will be the Dodgers at the Rockies, but which game will that be of the 3? We'll preview it for you next. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. The guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey,
it's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, we know the Dodgers are going to be minus 300 favorites or more in all three games, Tom, this week against the Colorado Rockies. I will say that Sugano has actually been okay. The Rockies signed him in the offseason. He hasn't been bad, and Freeland generally is okay at home. But if I forced you to take the Rockies in one of these three games and bet your 100 to win 300, which one would you make it? Now, Snell looked great, too, last time out in his first start back. I don't think the Rockies will win any of these three games. I don't think so. But if you think that they had a shot in one, which would it be?
I would go against Green, and actually, I would choose Monday, the Sagano game, for a couple of reasons. One, I buy into altitude playing an issue into players. It always has been and is an issue in other sports. So the first game for the Dodgers being on the road from LA to Colorado, I would buy into. And two, I think that game would be the largest differential in the money line. Like, the market doesn't view Roki Sasaki the same way it views Snell. So I think that the Rockies would be the largest underdog in that Sagano game. Therefore, I would want the biggest piece of the pie I could possibly get for the largest prize, which would be that big plus money. Freeland is fine at home, and I don't think up too highly of Eric Lauer. So those money lines would be closer to even. The Snell one would be overboard. Therefore, I just take the Rockies.
Yeah, I would at least minus 300, I think, in all three games, regardless of who the Dodgers pitch there. Yankees at the Orioles. Of course, this could be a competitive series. You never know. Chris Bassett is off the IL for Baltimore. He'll make the start Tuesday. Shane Baz for the Orioles on Monday and Kyle Bradish on Thursday. Warren, Fried, and Cole are the Yankee starters, but those starters have not been the issue for the Yankees. It's scoring runs, Tom. Like that's really the question here, and one that we really can't answer.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting series. Are we going to get the Yankees, bouncing back after, you win the series versus the Mariners, you lose the series versus the Blue Jays? Can you bounce back and win this series versus the Orioles? And the Orioles on the other foot is like, okay, are they actually going to start to build some momentum? They just won the series versus the Rays, who had won 9 in a row. Granted, it wasn't against the toughest opponents, but the Orioles go into Tampa, win that series. Can they now continue that at home against the team that's been underperforming? But it's really going to come down to the offense, because the Yankees have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. They just can't seemingly hit on a consistent basis. You score 10 runs one game against the Mariners, you get blanked the next game. Where is the offense going to come from, and when and how frequently will it show up?
Blue Jays will take on the Tampa Bay Rays. Boy, that Soriano trade for Toronto actually looks pretty good at this point. Boy, tough matchups, though, pitching-wise. Shane McClanahan is back off the IL. He'll start Wednesday. And Max Scherzer's, I don't know, what is he doing, Tom, at this point? Just piling on numbers, I think. That's about it for his career. Bieber on Thursday. Soriano, Scherzer, and Bieber, not bad on paper, but, man, formidable going up against Tampa Bay this week. In Tampa.
It is, and this is, I just view this as a spot. I'm going to continue to back the Rays. And you lose the series versus the Orioles. I just said the Orioles won it. I don't believe in the Blue Jays. Their lineup's going to be a little bit weaker because we know that Vlad Guerrero's on the 7-day concussion IL. So I'll just continue to back the Rays. They've been a machine at home. A couple losses against the Orioles don't bother me. Give me the Rays in every game of the series.
Giants and Guardians. This is time for the Guardians to get going with games against San Francisco and Colorado next week. The Giants will roll out Wisenhunt, Hauser, and Roop. They'll be dogs in all three games. Foster Griffin, Parker Messick, and Gavin Williams will pitch for Cleveland, but I would anticipate maybe the Giants being able to take a game or two. Just simply put, Cleveland can't score a lot of runs, and that's kind of the game that the Giants play too here, Tom.
The guards are going to be favored in every game. Foster Griffin was great. He was traded to them at the deadline. Parker Messick has been absolutely unbelievable in his first season. We know that Gavin Williams is a stud. The guards are going to be favorites. And the thing I would say for them in this spot, they are sitting, 1 game out of the wild card, and they are 5 games out of the AL Central. The AL Central might be a bit much at this point, but it's time to put up or shut up, right? Like you make these moves at the deadline, you bolster your pitching, you go get Joe Adell. You have to be able to beat a team like the Giants. Losing 2 games in this series is unacceptable, and it's just time to pack it up. Get 2 games out of this series against the Giants. It's that simple for the Guardians.
Angels taking on the Astros. Boy, the Astros are licking their chops with this series coming up here. George Klassen, who just picked up his first major league win. Klassen also pitched against Miami. I actually thought he was okay, Tom. I actually liked him. Ureña's had a really good year. I saw him pitch. He did not pitch as well. But I got to tell you, Thursday's game. I mean, there was a point, Tom, where Grayson Rodriguez was the number one pitching prospect, not on the Angels, not on the Orioles, in all of baseball. He was the number one pitching prospect. I don't know what has happened to this guy. He still strikes out guys and has swings and miss. But the Astros have no excuse whatsoever for not winning this series. They should win. And I like Klassen and I like Ureña, but Astros have easily got to win 2 out of 3. The one thing I guess I would look at in this series, Tom, is a lot of runs probably being scored regardless of who pitches for Houston, because their starting pitching just is not that good.
Right. Again, this is the same spot for a lot of these teams. The Astros against the Angels, like the Astros, to your point, they got to be licking their chops, looking at this series saying, okay, we're coming down to the end of August. We're playing an extremely weak team. We have the offense going right now. We need to start to build and control our lead in the AL West. That's the only thing that this series is about for the Astros. They've been scuffling a little bit. They got to get back on track. Dropping 2 for the Astros only opens up the door for the Rangers, who are just a game and a half back, or 2 games back in the AL West, and a few games back, when it comes to just a playoff picture overall. So the Rangers should be looking at the series and be like, hey, we just lost a few to the Angels. Can the Angels do us a favor and continue to win? But if the Astros don't win 2 out of 3 in this series, I have no hope for them going into the postseason.
Tom, do you think, let me show you that standings again. Let's call those up, Sam. Do you think that there will be a team in the American League playoffs that makes the postseason under 500 this season? A team that makes it under 500. 81 and 81, I think I can live with that. Do you think someone goes 80 and 82 and gets in?
Probably, and this is just because no one and this is just an indictment overall in the AL outside of the Rays, the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the White. Like, no one wants to win. I think we will see an 80 and 82 team, and there will be massive underdogs, and they could go on a run like the Rangers did, or like the Diamondbacks did a couple years ago, and win a couple series.
I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of baseball, a team under 500 making the postseason, but we could get one this year. All right, coming up next, we'll preview the Mariners and Brewers and the Nationals and Rangers here on Pro Baseball Today. We continue our weekly previews here on Pro Baseball Today. I'm Craig Mish, along with Tom Vecchio. This is Pro Baseball Today. I don't care who the Brewers are playing. They're at home this week, so I am not going to get in their way. They've been the best team in baseball at home this season. I know Tampa Bay's been great too, but give me Milwaukee. Give me a winning series here this week. Harrison, May, and Drohan against Miller, Gilbert, and Kirby. The Brewers, Tom, they're losing games it seems like 3-2 in the sixth inning. They come back, they win 4-3. I am just simply so impressed with how they've been able to dominate at home. Very similar to Tampa Bay. So as good as Seattle's pitching is, I'm not going to buy this one. Give me a series win for Milwaukee. Wouldn't be surprised if they sweep. They're just that good there.
They are, and looking at this, at face value, but okay, we're looking at a really close series. Miller, Gilbert, Kirby going. Those are stars that you'd want on a road series if you're the Mariners. Like, you could go toe to toe with any team's pitching staff and any team's hitting, knowing that you have those three guys on the mound. But what the Brewers do at home, we can't be discounting at all. Now, I will say that the Brewers have been a little bit middling as of late. They lose the series versus the Padres. So the Sunday's results against the Dodgers are to be determined. So they have been a little bit up and down over the past week and a half or so. But they're back at home. You can't possibly get in front of this train when you know how good the Brewers have been, especially once they get to the back end of that bullpen. Uribe, I believe, is still on the IL for them. So it does weaken their bullpen just a touch, but they're still too good at home to pass up.
41-22 entering Sunday at home. That's as good as it gets. Okay, so the Washington Nationals, who've sort of middled around and jumped back into the wild card a little bit. Their Fangraphs odds are below 5%, so probably not going to happen. But this is just going to be a very tough week, I think, for Texas. I don't know. I mean, I think Washington could win this series because DeGrom's supposed to pitch on Wednesday. I don't see that happening at this point. Quantrill goes on Tuesday. Rocker's good for about 4 innings at a time, Tom, and that's about it. Cavalli's dominated every start that he's involved in. I mean, call me crazy. I think Washington has a shot to win against Texas this week.
They really are. The Nats got to be live to win all those games based on the offense that they have. I don't see Jacob deGrom making that most recent start after he was pulled from the most recent start against the Angels with the tricep soreness. They're going to go with some type of bullpen game. Sure, you want a bullpen game when you have Kate Cavalli on the side, who's coming off an absolute gem the other day, was perfect through, 5.2 or 6.2, gives up the one hit. He has 10 strikeouts. And that was against a scorching hot Cubs lineup. So the Nats, despite the fact that they traded away some players, they're missing James Wood out on, they have to be live to win at least one game in the series, if not two.
Yeah, it's crazy. I forgot James Wood has been out for Washington, too, and they sort of jumped back in this thing. I thought after they got swept by the Braves that would be it for them. But as you look at the wild card chase, Washington, as you can see right there, they are at the bottom. And they're 6.5 games out, and it's much different than the American League, but give them a 3 or 4 game winning streak, and all of a sudden it puts them back in the race there. Now, the Cubs have certainly built this huge lead, and I do think they're going to make it. Again, I've illustrated why I think having PCA and some of those other pieces is big. Arizona, San Diego, Philadelphia, and then the odds drop when it gets to Miami. Miami on Fangraphs about 10%, St. Louis about 8%. And I don't give Cincinnati or Washington any chance at all, or Cincinnati and Pittsburgh any chance at all. I actually like Washington maybe to finish ahead of some of those teams as well. But you think, Tom, you said that both teams in the West get in. I'm going to disagree with you. I think Philadelphia will get in the end. I'm hoping that the Marlins get to the end of the line here. Of course, that's who I'm rooting for, being part of their broadcast every day. But I think Philadelphia gets in, and I think Arizona gets in. Those are the two teams for me. I think San Diego will be the odd team looking out.
Okay. It's going to be close regardless. The one thing I would say, in the Marlins' favor is they got, 6 games coming up against the Nats before the end of August. So there's a path forward for the Marlins to pick up a couple games and get in that picture. And again, it's not an easy path forward for both the Padres and the Diamondbacks. They're going to play each other. They're going to play the Dodgers. It's going to be, a tough end of the season for both of those teams. And then the Phillies, they also have to play the Marlins. They also have to play the Braves and so on and so forth. So I think there's a path forward for the Phillies falling out. I definitely can buy into what you're saying, that both teams from the West won't make it. The Cubs are solidified in their position, but definitely seeing the Diamondbacks or the Padres fall out, one of them would not surprise me.
And Miami has 3 games against Arizona remaining, 3 games against San Diego remaining, 6 games against the Cubs remaining, and 3 games against the Dodgers. So you could add Atlanta. So you could look at it one way or the other. That schedule's impossible, or we're glad that they have those games because they get a chance to actually beat those teams. I mean, I guess if that's the way you want it, you want to be able to play the teams that you got to beat. Anyway, we'll be back with more on Pro Baseball Today. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. The guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan has to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey, absolutely.
It's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is. It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. Time now for our prediction market discussion. And let's start off with Yordan Alvarez, who is putting together a historical season, Tom. One that may result in the Triple Crown, not just for the American League, but may result in the Triple Crown for Major League Baseball, which is just incredible to think about. Average, home runs, runs driven in. We've seen some drop off from Arias and Otto Lopez in the NL, and all of a sudden Yordan may take them both, AL and NL. But what do you make of sort of where things are at with him? He's been the best hitter in baseball without a doubt.
He has. It's great to see. I love seeing players do special things, especially when we know how good Yordan has been over the past few years. He's just dealt with some injury unluckiness, wherever you want to call it. We couldn't stay healthy. That was the knock against him. But really, when he's out there, he is arguably the best hitter in all of baseball. Now, we are dealing with I'm going to say not fully healthy Ohtani. He hasn't been out there. Judge hasn't been out there, but still Yordan can make the case. I think it's great to see. When you're looking at this market specifically, will he actually take the Triple Crown, not just in the AL, but overall? I think it's really, really tough to do, but I'd be interested in backing him in some capacity to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, the National League MVP has taken quite the turn here, and it seems like we're back and forth every day. In fact, when the series began and the Cubs played the Dodgers, Ohtani was the favorite, then Pete Crow Armstrong was the favorite, and then Ohtani became the favorite again. I mean, I've maintained the same thing. I don't care how this award ends, Tom. I find no world where Ohtani pitching and hitting is not the MVP of Major League Baseball. It's crazy to me. That doesn't take anything away from what PCA is doing, and I know that certainly WAR is going to tell a big story in this one, and Pete Crow Armstrong may win, but boy, this is going to be close. In the end, I'm going to just lean on Ohtani winning for this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same, and I think PCA deserves a ton of credit. I think he should rightfully be in the conversation, and a lot of people are going to try and paint their own argument, say, oh, what Ohtani does pitching and hitting is unbelievable, even though he doesn't have the highest volume of innings. What PCA does defensively and WAR is absolutely unbelievable, and he deserves to be in the conversation. And what it comes down to with Ohtani at the plate versus PCA at the plate, like you are going to find the argument that you want to make and make it for that specific player, whether you're backing him. I think Ohtani wins it when it's all said and done, but I do think this is the closest that we have seen over the past few years.
American League Cy Young appears still to be a two-player race. Cam Schlittler over on the Kalshi market has certainly taken over most of the investments here at 68%. And then we have Dylan Cease less than that. And also Sonny Gray is still in the mix. I mean, Gray has had a fantastic year, but I just don't think that he moves up or down. I feel like this is a static number at this point. Is there a chance that the buy-in on Cease moves up before the end of the year? Because it does feel like Cam Schlittler's getting close to locking this up.
Yeah, I think if there's any spot to look, would be you think that Cease gets a little bit closer. He puts up some good performances to end the season. Therefore, his number increases, but he doesn't actually end up winning it. I think Cam Schlittler will win it, but maybe you could get into Cease and then get out once his number and his percentage changes just a little bit.
The National League is really close. It looked like Sal Stewart was going to run away with the Rookie of the Year, and then all of a sudden, boy, J.J. Weatherholt came on so strong. Esmeralyn Valdez, also from Pittsburgh, was in this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but he has fallen back quite a bit. So it appears to be two guys. It appears to be Weatherholt, and I do think that he's going to end up winning it at this point, although he's not the overwhelming favorite. I suppose, Tom, if Sal Stewart was to get super duper hot here at the end of the year, maybe that could be the investment point. But beyond that, I don't see anyone else beyond those two. I would also say Joe Mack on Miami is another name as a catcher. Had he played in the month of April, I think he'd be more serious in this race.
I think Sal Stewart should win it. I think it's clear to me. When you have a player who's top 15 in the league in home runs and is tied for the league lead, not the NL lead, not the NL rookie lead, the MLB lead in RBIs, I think Sal Stewart is going to be the end up winner of Rookie of the Year. And I know WAR tells a different story when you're looking at J.J. Weatherholt, and this is not to take anything away from J.J. Weatherholt. He's had a great year, really. And the Cardinals have found a franchise player that they're going to build around for years to come. But what Sal Stewart is doing, and everyone's going to say, oh, look at his home roads, look at his home, oh, he plays in a small, little league park. Of course, his numbers are the same on the road as they are at home. They're within a few RBIs and home runs on the road. He deserves to be the NL Rookie of the Year.
Major League Baseball's home runs leader. At this point, it's fair to say we got a wide open race. I don't know why this market is what it is here. And call me crazy, but Junior Caminero to me seems like a pretty good buy-in at the spot that he is in right now. I know Schwarber is going to be the most ticketed player at this point, but I don't know. I mean, call me nuts here. I think Schwarber's got a shot. But I also think that Caminero could catch him, and Jordan is there as well.
Right. This is, frankly, to see Schwarber that far ahead, when Schwarber is 37, and he's been basically ice cold since the home run derby. He's sitting at 37. Jordan is 36. Olsen is 35, and Caminero is 35. We're looking at a 1 or 2 differential. I don't think Schwarber should be that high. So the answer to me would be, if you like Caminero, buy into Caminero now, or look to sell Schwarber that he's not going to lead the league when it comes to home runs, because Jordan going on a stretch where he has 3 or 4 in a week is very, very likely, considering how cold Schwarber has been since the All-Star break.
Team home runs this season, wouldn't you know, even without Judge, the Yankees lead the way, and it may have been Washington if James Wood would have been healthy. And I think if I knew the health of Wood, that would really help me a lot here. But he's got that kind of injury, Tom, where I don't know that they're going to rush him back at all. Washington is second. New York is first. Any other, you think, lower investment buy-in here on anyone else outside of those two?
No. If we knew Wood was going to come back and what date he was going to come back, that would impact things. But also, if Washington's out of it, there's no reason to bring one of your franchise players back. The Yankees are... They're 9 behind the Nationals as of now, 179 to 170. in these two, different differential between two teams for most home runs. So if you believe Washington will maintain this lead, they're looking at a great price right now. Or are you saying they're going to fall off, and the Yankees getting Stanton, Bellinger, and Judge back will allow them to overcome that 9 home run differential in the final 6 weeks or so of the season? That's the real question you got to ask yourselves. I think buying into Washington now, and just as the games go on and they still hold the lead, you will have a better number in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Boston's next manager, this seems pretty cut and dry. As long as Boston just plays decent baseball, I can't imagine them not inviting Chad Tracy back to manage next season. I know that there are some other names out there, Tom, but I don't like this market at all. I mean, they would have to fall completely flat for them not to invite him back, no?
Right, and this is not something that we were saying a month and a half ago, saying, the Red Sox fire Cora, they bring up their AAA manager from AAA Worcester, and they'll run him out throughout the end of the season, and then they'll move on after that. It's like, well, no, actually, he deserves a fair shot at it, and given what the fact that the Red Sox have done and completely changed the trajectory of their season, I think they do invite him back. And this is not something that I was going to be sold on when they first called him up, essentially. I think he will be back. I think he deserves to be back. I think the fans like him. And I think the way that the clubhouse has shifted is worthy of a multi-year deal for him.
The Phillies is a little bit more complicated because the notion is that Alex Cora didn't want to take the job when it was offered to him immediately, wanted to take the rest of the year off. He's 55% on Kalshi. Don Mattingly is less than Alex Cora sitting in the seat right now. I didn't see that coming, but I suppose where there's smoke, there's fire here. The only thing with Cora, I would say, Tom, is it fair to wonder if Seattle or, I don't want to root for Kotze to get bumped, but if it does happen, the A's going to Vegas, say, let's bring in Alex Cora and pay him council type money. Maybe there's a name that we're not thinking of here, or maybe they land on Mattingly. I actually wouldn't go with Cora here.
So the reason I would argue for Cora, just from a baseball perspective, not from any of this type of market, is that Mattingly doesn't have many years left. If Mattingly re-signed, it's going to be for 1 year, 2 years. If you bring in Cora, you can have him for a long term, and that is enticing to a franchise, knowing that you have some stability.
Yeah, I just think Cora is going to be the highest paid manager in baseball next season, and someone's going to overpay significantly like they did for Council to get him. I'd keep an eye on that. All right, we'll have more prediction market discussion next. For me, Ohtani is the MVP, even if he pitches 15 games a year and that's it. The guy's the best hitter in baseball, or one of them, and pitches, even if it's 15 games a year and he's great, sign me up. I think he still wins, but I think I like the other investments there.
Yeah, I would say we're in total agreement on this. Ohtani's going to win the award, but that doesn't mean that A, he's a good investment at this point, and B, another player isn't a good investment.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the conference. It's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Just can't win the big game. He can't get us in the big game. Well, we got to let him go now because we're tired. We'll keep the quarterback. So, you know what I've been saying? Okay, you kept the quarterback. Guess what? Mr. Lamar Jackson, it's on you now.
Hey, absolutely.
It's on you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's on Lamar.
It is. It is totally on him now and the new coaching staff there.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today on SportsGrid. Now we have to try and decipher on Kalshi where to invest on the American League Central and American League West, which is not easy to do. Now, I suppose if you just simply believe in the Chicago White Sox, Tom, it's an open and shut case and you just move forward. But I can't quit Cleveland because they won 10 in a row in September last year. No one had them going anywhere. I can't quit Detroit because they went on this nice little run. I'm going to quit Minnesota. Maybe I would buy down on Minnesota. Maybe that's what I would do. But, Royce Lewis is keeping them alive. Buxton is back. Who knows? It's a very confusing division. And if you think this is confusing, wait till we get to the West.
Yeah, I would say it's Chicago's to win until it's not. And I can buy into Detroit or Cleveland making the postseason via a wild card spot. I can't buy into them overcoming a 5-game lead. And I know Cleveland did it last year and they went on this miracle run, but that was a miracle. I don't think it's going to happen a second year in a row, overcoming a 5-game differential in a month. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it's Chicago's to lose.
And then the American League West is even more confusing here because, again, you have Houston, who has a horrific run differential. They really don't pitch very well. They hit very well. They have the best hitter going right now, arguably, in baseball. But, I guess Jordan is the one player that team can't afford to lose. They would fall flat. We've heard Correa's coming back. Maybe Altuve, who's been hurt, he could come back too. And, Texas is, to me, the one enigma for me. I can't figure out why Texas isn't as good as they are. But meanwhile, they still sit in a wild card position even after losing all those games this week.
Yeah, the answer would be to sell to the no on Seattle. They're not going to win the division. I think Houston will win it. I want to have hope in Texas because I think they'd be a really fun team to back once the postseason gets here. I'm not sure Houston's that good overall. They've really mediocre pitching. I think Texas could beat them out for it, but I know that Seattle's not good enough to win the AL West. So whether or not it's Houston winning and maybe Texas grabs a wild card or vice versa, something along those lines, that I'm up in the air about still. And some of the injuries with Texas, especially losing DeGrom and Eovaldi's not there. The answer is no on Seattle.
Yeah, I'm with you on them, and I certainly think, to me, if my buy-in price is there, Texas would be the one team that I would buy in on. All right, National League Central, this is pretty cut and dry here. You're just looking for second place, I think, or third. Tom seemingly thinks maybe there's a buy-in point on the Cubs winning division. I don't think so. I think it is Milwaukee's. It's just a question for me, maybe who moves up between Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or St. Louis. I saw Pittsburgh in person this past week. I was not impressed at all. And as we talked about earlier in the show, what will Pittsburgh do? Pittsburgh's young pitching is great. So maybe this is my point here. Maybe the buy-in is getting off Pittsburgh and maybe to finish at the end. Because once they're out, Ashcraft, done for the year. Skeens, done for the year. Jones, done for the year. Chandler, you can't shut down everyone, Tom. But to me, the second the Pirates are out, they're going to want to just preserve the arms for next year, aren't they?
They are. I still think there's a path forward for the Cubs. And they have 6 games against the Brewers coming off the 31st, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd. 7 games against the Brewers to end August, start September. And then they play them immediately the next week, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So they have 7 games against the Brewers coming up. I will also say to end the season for the Cubs, they're going to play the Braves, which is certainly tough, but the Braves could have things locked up in the mid-September. They play Cincinnati, and then they play Boston at the very last series of the season. So those are going to be tough, no doubt. But 7 games against a team when you only have a 4-game differential for the division is not that much. So if they can take 4 of those and they lose 3, 4-3 against the Brewers, doesn't seem that much to overcome for the Cubs.
Now, the American League champion, Tampa Bay, is going to naturally have the edge, and I think Tom and I feel the same way about them. But if history tells us anything, is expect the unexpected in the postseason, and teams like Tampa Bay generally don't make it to the end. So the buy-in could be on Boston, it could be on the Yankees. Would you go any further on the Central team or the West team? I probably would not. So is it just as simple as take one of Tampa, Boston, or New York? Do you think anyone else comes out of that American League?
I don't. If one of those three teams don't represent the AL, I think we're in for just absolutely chaotic postseason where there's going to be upsets and no one's going to be performing, and we're going to be looking at collapses. Oh, how could the Rays be this good throughout the regular season, and then they don't end up making it anywhere in the postseason? So if one of those three teams don't win the AL, I'd be shocked. I think the investment opportunity would be Boston, just because if they get on one of those hot streaks come October 1st, they could run through series and be representing the AL before you know it.
The World Series champion, of course, is always the Dodgers to lose. They're like tinkering with the roster. They can afford to put Edwin Diaz in the closer's role, and if he fails, it's like, we're fine. Forget about everybody else. Evan Phillips is blowing games for them. They don't care. They'll just get to the end. It is really the Dodgers to lose. But look, it was very close in that 7-game series against Toronto. Everyone forgets about how close that could be. Do you see Atlanta, Milwaukee, Tampa Bay? I kind of feel like, I'll say this, the only way I think the Dodgers don't win the World Series, Tom, is if they lose the home field to another team. Because if they have to go to Milwaukee for 7, or if they have to go to Tampa for 7, or go to Atlanta for 7, maybe, call me crazy, going to Philadelphia for 7 if their pitching gets right. That's the only way for me. So I'm kind of like rooting for LA to lose a few more games and not finish at the top.
I am too. And, obviously the market I would love to see would be, LA or the field. Obviously that would change as the season comes to a close. But I do believe the Braves, and if the Phillies get right in terms of their pitching, those would be the teams. I have the most interest in the Braves just because I believe, again, their lineup, as we'll continue to say, can go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers offense. And that's what it comes down to. The pitching is not nearly as good. Knowing that you're going to have, 3 or 4 starters, third or fourth star rotations, those guys have to be their number 2 starters. That's an issue going up against the Dodgers. No doubt about it. Grant Holmes is going to carry a rotation into the postseason. Chris Sale can win you a game, but if you lose the Chris Sale game against Yamamoto, and then all of a sudden you still have to deal with Snell, you still have to deal with Skubal, the Dodgers have that advantage. But I believe the Braves have the best lineup to take down the Dodgers.
Yeah, they have 7 guys usually every night that you feel confident can pop one out. Pro Baseball Today has our annual daily discussion, weekly, whatever it is on the CBA. We're down to under 10%, Tom, that this gets done by the 2nd. You want to throw any money down on the S? Yeah,
0% chance that this happens by December. March 1st or April 1st is what matters.
Oh, April. Don't give me April. You're hurting my feelings. Oof, I need this done by March. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Will he or won't he? Shohei Ohtani pitch again in September. USA Today reports Sunday saying that he is expected to return to the mound. Tom, I tend to believe this. I think Ohtani will pitch in September. I think he will pitch in the postseason. I think he could pitch as a starter, but it feels to me like the best Ohtani we're going to see is a single time through a lineup in the regular season and postseason. So what does that mean for me? It means 3 innings. It means 50 or 60 pitches. And by the way, that's fantastic. They don't even need more than that. But I don't know that it'll be a bulk guy, because I do think he wants to open up a game as a starter. I don't think he's ever come out of the bullpen, if I'm not mistaken. So that is where I see it. I see him as like their 4 or 5 starter in the postseason, going 3 innings, maybe 4, and then somebody else comes and finishes the job.
I would agree. And this is you could definitely see an Ohtani, Robleski, kind of piggyback situation where Ohtani starts, you get the 3 innings, whatever it is, and then you have to work from there. I believe this is a scenario where Ohtani wants to pitch more than the Dodgers want him to pitch. Where like Ohtani is forcing the issue that he wants to come back, he wants to start games, whether it's be ready in September so he can be ready to roll in October. I think the Dodgers would prefer if they kind of ease off on things, but it is what it is. He wants to pitch. I think he'll pitch, come September, whatever, and he'll be ready for October 1st.
He's at the top, and you know who's been at the bottom? It's been the Sacramento A's. They're going to get a shiny new stadium in a couple of years in Las Vegas. I actually want to go to that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Hey, look, they took a lot of steps forward by signing some players, Nick Kurtz and Severino, and then Butler. 2 of those 3 haven't really worked out. Kurtz isn't playing. Tom, would you believe that the A's, after the month of April, were 17-14? They are 31-61 since. That's historical levels of bad, a win percentage of less than 35%. That'd be on pace for what we saw with the White Sox a couple of years ago, with losing 120 games. They fired their pitching coach. They fired their GM, David Forst. I guess John Fisher is seen enough. And remember, Forst, I believe, was working with Billy Beane previously. He'd been there a really long time. Look, the reality is with this sort of thing, I don't think it's the coach's fault at all. I don't think it's always the players to me, or the roster construction has nothing to do with that. And Forst, by the way, I guess said that he wasn't going to go to Vegas anyway. I thought that was weird. Like there were some reports saying that he wanted to stay in California. I don't know. Here's the bottom line. You can't have a $1 billion stadium open up in Vegas in 2 years and have a horrible team. The Raiders sort of got away with it a little bit. It seems like the road team's always rooting for the team against the Raiders, but the Raiders were pretty bad. You can't have historical levels of bad and say, hey, come see us in 2 years. It can't happen. I think the A's are just getting ahead of this. 1 more year in Sacramento and then in Las Vegas.
Right. For football, it's a little bit different just because of the scarcity of the games and just the overall dynamic of the league. But having a new stadium and having a team that is completely uncompetitive is just way too. You don't build a fan base. You can't sell tickets. We're going to be looking at a disaster when it comes to the money in and the money coming out. The Athletics need a complete franchise turnaround, and you would like for that to come when they move to a new stadium. They're not dealing with Oakland. They're not dealing with Sacramento. They can have a new stadium and a new franchise, and it's going to be a completely new chapter for them, and everything will be all sunshine and rainbows. But there's nothing to suggest that will be happening, because the talent that they have, the combination of the pitching coach and the talent meeting in the middle to have a plan just doesn't seem to be working. They need a new direction for the franchise.
It seems like they could be, kind of entering, and it's happened before. I mean, you think about when we had the expansion in Miami and Colorado in '93, and then Tampa Bay and Arizona in '98. But those teams, didn't feel, unfortunately, I hate to say, as bad as the A's are right now. They kind of feel like an expansion team, yet with a few guys that they've signed to long-term contracts. So I kind of understand it. I know the owner is really not well liked, and everyone hates him in Oakland for leaving there. But yeah, nobody went to those games there. Like, you got to understand that's part of the game too. It's next year. There's going to be a lot of pressure on that team to get it figured out, because you can't have a 50,000 or 40,000 seat stadium with a team that is projected in their first year to lose 100 games. I mean, I can't have that. Can't be that kind of expansion. All right, Tom. Week ahead. What are you most looking forward to this week as we close it out?
This week, I think the Diamondbacks Red Sox series is really awesome. That's going to be super fun. Then the Brewers being back at home against the pitching staff that the Mariners have. Granted, hasn't been that amazing as me. I think those two series with three interesting teams, not the Mariners so much, but those series really do stand out to me.
Awesome stuff. Thanks again, Tom. For our producer, Sam, I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Pro Baseball Today. We'll be back with you once again next Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, depending on when you are watching our show, giving you the outlook and landscape of Major League Baseball here on SportsGrid. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next Sunday.